Here I've got the E7 from GS Music. It's a 7-voice analog polysynth from Argentina, and I think it's the only synth I had ever heard of from Argentina. This one is in its blue and black color scheme, but you might be more familiar with it in its light blue with white knobs outfit. And this is a real throwback in that it feels like it's a vintage synth at heart. It even looks like a vintage synth with metal body, wooden end cheeks, and very, very sturdy knobs. If you look at this, you might be able to see the metal shafts all bolted onto the panel. The only thing that gives it away as a modern construction are the LED screen, and on the back we've got a USB connection, and of course on this model we've got the blue LEDs. And what I think's really interesting here, well, primarily it sounds great and it's got a real vintage VCO vibe going on, but also the mix of functions that we've got on this, it's a bit like a vintage Frankensynth. It brings most of the useful functions of things like the Junos, the DXs, the Jupiters, Oberheims and Profits without being a replica of any of them. It can't be a like-for-like replacement for any of them, but it is almost a sort of best-of approach, and I'll show you what I mean. Firstly, we've got 7 voices, the E7, which is between the Junos, the Jupiter 8, the Jupiter 6, the Prophet 5 and the Oberheims. Nothing else has got 7 voices, but we do have 2 oscillators just like the Jupiters, the JX, the Prophets, or the Oberheims, and we can have a selection of waveforms. We've got triangle, we've got sort of what would you call that, shark's tooth, we've got sawtooth, or we can turn it off completely, or we can have, I'll just put also tuning on there, or we can have a pulse, we can change the width of that pulse, and we can add the pulse to the triangle, the shark's tooth, or to the sawtooth. And we can see what we've got going on there in that display. It's not an oscilloscope, it's not showing you exactly what's happening. And in real time, it's just a representation of those waveforms. So having the option of the pulse and the sawtooth is a bit like the Oberheims, it's a bit like the Prophets, but we can't have the sawtooth, the pulse, and the triangle like you can on the Prophets. So you see what I'm saying? It's got a blend of all sorts of things from different synths, but doesn't replicate, as I say, any of them one-to-one. And we've got extra bits, like if we look at the mixer, we've got a sub for both of the oscillators. You don't get that on any vintage synth. You get it on things like the Prophet 6, but the Prophet 6 has got a high-pass filter. This doesn't have a high-pass filter. Junos have got a high-pass filter, as do the Jupiters yet, so it's lacking the high-pass filter that a lot of them have. But it's got other little tricks up its sleeve that some of the vintage synths have as well. We've got keyboard tracking for the envelope generators. We've got velocity modulation of the attack phases of them as well. So that's like the Super Jupiter, Jupiter 8 and Jupiter 6. Don't do that, Super Jupiter does, as far as I recall. And then we've got the onboard chorus, and this can be a standard chorus, sort of Juno-esque, or ensemble, like Poly 6. We've got sync over here, but we don't have any cross mod. We do have very fast LFOs though. I'll show all this in a second. And then the extra additions we've got that you don't get on the vintage kit, obviously things like the delay, we've got a stereo spread, we've got stereo motion, and we've got 3 LFOs. Well, actually we've got 4 if you include the stereo motion LFO, that's fixed in there. We've also got 8 banks of 64, I think it is, preset slots, plus MPE compatibility and 4-part multi-timbrality. So what we'd have here really is a very vintage inspired unit, but it's very much its own synth. The interface is also quite unique. It's absolutely knob-laden, as you can see, and everything you do is reflected in the LED. So here's the mixer. I don't know if you can see that very well, but there's the 5 different settings for the mixer. If we play with the filter, we can see what's happening with the filter. Same with all the modulation. So you'll see lots of knobs around the oscillators and the filter, for example, and these are the modulation routines. I've got shift on there, so when you hit shift, everything in the inverted text is being adjusted. So take the shift off, LFO 1 mod, LFO 2 mod, shift R, LFO 3 mod, or that's envelope generator 1 mod, sorry, and LFO 3 mod. The LFO lights are flashing, and that's because we've got polyphonic LFOs in here, so it wouldn't really make much sense to have 7 LFOs or trying to be represented with one of them. Maybe you could, but you can speed up the LFOs from using the tracking of the keyboard as well. So yeah, it wouldn't really make much sense to have them flashing. So yeah, everything's very much in your face, on the surface, very old school. All these knobs are screwed on to metal shafts bolted onto the surface. It really does feel like you're using, except for the screen obviously, like you're using something from back in the day. And once you start playing this, I mean, lots of synths have got plastic shafts and you've got slightly wobbly knobs on them. They never bother me, but once you feel something like this, you feel like in really comfortable territory. It really is very, very well put together. And when people complain about plastic shafts, once you play with something like this, you sort of understand why they complain about them. They're not a big thing for me, but yeah, these just feel so solid. Very, very impressive indeed. I thought I'd start this off by taking a look at how the voicing works rather than starting off with the oscillators and going through the different sections, just because it's quite interesting the way this whole thing is set up. So I've got an initial patch here, and the first thing you can hear if you've got headphones on is that we're in stereo. So each of the voices is in a different part of the stereo field, and that's using this stereo spread here. So we're in shift at the minute. Change the stereo spread, we can put it central, or we can change the voices from left to right, or right to left, or the other way around, whichever I was looking at there. But you'll notice that the voices are playing quite randomly. So we're not getting a left to right spread when we play them, but when we play a chord, we are. Just drop down the filter on there. We've then got this stereo motion, and stereo motion has got its own LFO. We're best off keeping this centrally. There we go. So now we're getting a nice drift from left to right on each of them. So we're starting off with some nice little touches, and if we go into the menu system, so shift is on, menu gives us some options for the voicing. We enter those different parts of the menu by hitting 1 to 4, come back to the menu by pressing menu. So menu's like a back button almost. There isn't any sort of back or undo button on this. So you'll see there, I've done that wrong. And now I'm copying. I don't want to copy anything. So let's come out of that. Well, if we go back into there, press menu, go to the voices. This is really quite cool. So if we're in mono mode, we can have just a single voice playing, which is really great for if you're doing leads or basses, because you don't want them changing slightly between the voices necessarily. If you're trying to emulate something like a mini mode, it's only got the one voice. And then on the poly mode, so menu item 2, we've got it set to all at the minute. So they're playing in random orders as far as I can tell. Let's add a little bit of detune to that, make it a little bit nicer sounding. Okay, back into that menu, so shift, menu, go into the voices, number 2, poly mode, then we're playing all. But we can play just the even voices. So you can hear we've only got 3 there, we're getting voice stealing. I've not found the use for doing the odd or the even voices yet. There may be a reason, it might be something in the multi-timbral mode perhaps. But this is cool because playing 1 to 7, it's actually playing left to right. Take the stereo motion off. So that's a 0, stereo spread. Or we can play back again, so go back into the menu, voices, we can play from 7 to 1. You can see it all happening up there. But the coolest bit for me is that you can actually set the mono to a single voice. So talking of those modes, we've got poly mode, what they're in at the minute. We've got mono ST. This is about re-triggering. So if we turn the cutoff down, put the envelope model. It's not re-triggering. MT mode, it will re-trigger. And we've got those same for unison. Or, oops, let's come back to that again. So no re-trigger. On the unison mode, I don't think there's a way of controlling that detune amount, but it's set about where you'd like to have it. Add some stereo spread, some movement. So it's easy to get into that lush territory. Let's add some chorus to that just because we've got it. Taking a look at the multi-timbrality then, patch banks 1 and 2 can accept multi-timbral parts, the others can't. And out the box, patch bank 1 is full of factory multi-timbral presets. If we press shift, we can see we're in multi-timbral mode here because number 6 is lit. And if we go into this menu, we can get the menu items for the multi-timbrality. So channel transpose, MIDI CCs, I think that is there. The mixer, if we go into let's go into the mixer, so page 3. We can see we're listening to 1, 2, and 4 at the minute, although 4 doesn't do anything because if we go back into the menu, we come into channel and transpose. If we go into part 4, we can see the channel is off. Part 3 is on global, part 2 is on global, and part 1 is on global. So we can have 4 parts and they can have different MIDI channels, or we can have different, let's go down to next. We can have different velocity zones, different key zones. So on these, for example, so go into menu item 1, key zones are all the full keyboard. But if we go back into the menu, velocity zone, and here you can see part 1, part 3 and part 4 are all velocities, and part 2 is only, let's hit part 2. So we're editing part 2 now, 89 to 127. So these buttons here, when we're in multi-mode, are selecting which presets we're using, unless we're in a menu item, and then these buttons here select which menu item you're looking at. So 3, we're in the mixer, and now we're adjusting the mix level for 2, the mix level for 3, the mix level for 1. So let's put 1 and 2 back up again, turn 3 down for now. I've had a little play with this, and we're just listening to part 1 because we're below 89 on the velocity, but if I hit it harder, you can hear part 2 playing as well. Hear a bit of voice stealing going on because I'm playing 5 notes is that, and we've only got 7 voices, so we can't have 10 playing. Anyway, everything in the Multitimbral setup goes through the same chorus delay and has the same stereo spread and stereo motion. We've only got a stereo pair at the back, so if you did want to do things with different effects on different channels, that would be rather difficult, but you can get really nice, interesting patches through it. So for this one, for example, if we bring up number 3, you can hear now we're editing 3 because we've got 3 lit there. So the cutoff is only editing 3. Let's add some modulation to that. You can only do stuff like that when you've got a multi-timbral patch. So there we're playing 4 oscillators in total. 2 of them have been modulated by the LFO. Going to shift, go to the LFO modes. It's in polyphonic mode at the minute. Let's put it into monophonic mode. Let's take LFO 3 mod off. So we're only listening to LFO 2 now. Polyphonic modes. You can hear it's, well, there's more than one LFO in there. And because you've got the splits in there, you can have the bass in the left hand, you could have a pad in the center and an ARP on the top notes, for example. I did something with the MPE 7 recently and did a whole wham track using 6 voices out of that. So it's perfectly possible to do intricate things with this. But just to show you again, so we come into shift, we're in multi-mode, go to the menus, we can look at the different channels for each of them. So go to 1, so this is looking at 3 at the minute, look at part 1, part 2, part 3, so you can see part 2 is transposed as well. And part 4 is off, go back into the menu, and we've seen the mixer. That's the same for part 1, part 2, and part 3. Go back into the menu system, go to next. We can initialize it. We've seen the key zone and velocity zones, and then we can copy or paste. And 3, go to the voices on part 3, and that's the same as it is when we did the initial setup and we looked at the mono modes and the poly modes. You've just got to remember to get back to the menu, hit button 5. There's no back button. But yeah. Beautiful. My playing isn't. Let's take a look at the oscillators then, and we've got 2 oscillators. They're virtually identical. I say virtually identical because oscillator 2's got sync on it, but we get a choice of a triangle. Nice that, isn't it? A shark's tooth, which I think is a blend of the triangle and the sawtooth. Then the sawtooth. Here's a little bit of vibrato in there. That's from the initial patch with LFO3. If we look at that, we're going way into the 20 kilohertz there. Let's make that a bit louder. Then we've got a pulse, so we can turn off each of those shapes, bring the pulse in. Nice. Doesn't go through 0. And we can modulate it easily with LFO1. And as I mentioned in the intro, all the modulation routines for the oscillators are in the oscillator section. So LFO1 mod of the oscillator itself, so of the pitch. We hit shift to get envelope generator 1 modulation. And then of course we can blend those shapes. So yeah, let's leave the pulse on. So pulse and triangle. It's like a super sub, that, isn't it? Sub's turned up there, but actually it's not coming through. Modulate that. Almost a super sub, but not quite. Oscillator 2, as I say, is the same. We can tune them and transpose them. So let's bring in oscillator 2. Let's put them both on a saw. Let's detune oscillator 2. You can see the detune amount here. And it's just got a lovely rich tone, I think this has. Sort of bright and rich. It's everything you want from a vintage VCO. It's great. Transpose it, so press shift. Let's... And we've got a sub on both of them as well. So overdoing it on the subs there, but would it be nice if one of the subs was a triangle, so you had the different flavors there if you wanted them? Anyway, plenty to play with there. We have noise as well. And that is overridden by an external signal, so you can use external signals in this. Last thing I think to look at on this is the sync. Let's take oscillator 1 down in the mix, bring oscillator 2 up. We'll put sync on. It's a bit of a shame there's not an independent LED for sync, because sometimes you think you've got it on and you haven't. But we'll go into shift, hit sync, it's now on. Listening to oscillator 2, so we're still in shift mode, so we'll bring in envelope generator 1 modulation. We'll transpose it as well, shall we? There we go. That's a nice sound in sync. Do it a bit faster. Yeah, that works. Let's try that in unison actually. Let's take the shift off, come to unison mode. Cool. So I think that brings me to the end of the oscillators. Let's come back into mono mode and have a little play with the filter. We've just got a single filter on this. It's a 24 dB resonant low pass. And I did say in the intro, it's a shame it doesn't have a high pass, but actually, you lose so much bass when you bring in a little bit of resonance. That's the way to bring in a little bit of high pass. If you've got a pad, for example, let's take it off mono mode, put it into poly mode. Instantly just drops that bit of bass, makes it nice and more palatable as a pad. Let's drop that volume down a bit. Everything you do is reflected on the screen again. Lovely that, isn't it? And you hear it plucking out those resonances. Let's listen to a single tone then. Should take that that aftertouch off. Shift and aftertouch off there. Okay, let's turn that release off as well. Gonna go with half resonance. Again, you can hear the drop in volume. Stopping it there to avoid those copyright claims. Add in some more resonance, about 3/4. Oh, it's got those lovely little raspy bits in there. And watch your ears. Way into wherever that's going. Haven't got those really low thuds that you get from some. You can hear the different voices. Let's put a bit of tracking on then. So keyboard tracking here, we've got it on 0, completely flat, to full tracking. Is that about there? Let's see if we can do it without any sound from the oscillators. Not very well, because they're all slightly different. I wonder if there's a way of, well, let's auto tune it. So shift auto tune, but I think that's just the oscillators. I don't know. This is feeling very much like I'm playing my Jupiter 4 at the minute. The only calibration I could find in the manual is this auto tune in here. Very lo-fi vibe to that, isn't there? And again, as with the oscillators, we've got the modulation section here. So LFO1, LFO2, LFO3, the mod wheel or aftertouch. Not only does it have aftertouch, but we do have MPE mode as well. If we go to shift and configuration, down to clock MPE, so that's number 3, go to MPE, number 2, and turn it on. And now, we're in MPE mode. If you can play it properly. And this is what it sounds like after a little bit more practice. And then maybe the release, let's turn that one up as well. So not the longest of envelopes, but they feel nice. I've not noticed anything like this while I've been playing with it, by the way. Just, you know, when you dig in to do these videos, you sort of discover stuff as you're doing it. We've got velocity modulation of the attack, keyboard tracking, and we've got velocity modulation of the release. And what this velocity modulation does is the harder you hit it, it changes the attack. I think it reduces the attack. Let's turn that up. So hitting it gently, you get a long attack, and hitting it hard, I don't get an attack. Take the aftertouch off of that as well. So, quite cool. So lots of expressive playing to be had there. We've got the same for the release, and we've got the same for the envelope generator 2 as well. And then we've got keyboard tracking of the decay stage. So let's turn this velocity modulation off so don't get confused. It's faster the higher up we go. These are all nice little effects you can use. Putting that on a pad-like thing, you get different decays of the filter through the keyboard, which just makes it sound a bit softer. Almost like a slop mode, isn't it? Take that keyboard tracking off. Still a beautiful sound, that, isn't it? Let's whack it on full again. Everything's just a bit wider. Let's put a bit of delay on there as well, shall we? Maybe some stereo motion as well. Let's turn it on full. Ping pong delay on maybe. Set that off again. Let's look at the LFOs quickly. So I'll show you these with the filter. LFO 1 mod. So we're going up to 100 Hz there, which is audio rates. So although we don't have FM or cross modulation on this, we do have almost it through these sort of tones. So 5 main wave shapes, then we've got different modes in here as well. If we press shift, we get to the modes. So monophonic, I think I showed this earlier. Just a single LFO. Polyphonic. Keyboard tracking, so this is a bit like we had with the envelope generator, so slow down here, fast up here. So loads of little keyboard sync. So keyboard tracking but in sync with MIDI and clock sync. A nice little touch is that you can see the notes, the timing. Our little intro track was at 120 BPM and it was using LFO 1. Keyboard and clock sync, so yeah, lots of nice options in there with clock sync or without. Going to LFO 2, we get the same, but we can't modulate LFO 2 with envelope generator 1. Let's try a bit of that. Let's take LFO 1 mod off, LFO 2 mod on, generator 1 modulation of it. So that's envelope generator 1 modulating the rate of LFO 2. You can't do that monophonically. So if you had a chord, you're always in polyphonic mode. I don't know why that is. If we come to shift and we go to the modes, monophonic mode, and then we go to envelope mod, it doesn't let you do it. Not available in monophonic LFO mode. Just a bit odd because you can't do this with a chord. Then finally we've got LFO 3. It's a little bit more basic than LFO 2 or LFO 1. We've only got 4 wave shapes, but we can modulate it with the mod wheel or aftertouch. And if you look where LFO 3 pops up, it's pretty much everywhere oscillators 1 and 2 are as well. So the filter, oscillators, and amplifier. Let's take a very quick look at the chorus and the delay. Simple mix knob. These are digital effects. They're nice. So rate and depth. And we've got different types. We've got a standard, and we've got different type. We've got 2 types of chorus. We've got standard. This is standard, so without, with, then ensemble, so basic, and then Ensemble. Just different flavors. Very useful, actually. It's a nice tone anyway, it doesn't really need chorus. That's why the Jupiters didn't have chorus on them, but the Junos did. Junos used the chorus to sort of emulate having two voices. So let's try a Juno style thing. Yeah, works well. And then for a Poly 6 type thing, use the Ensemble. More of a string machine type effect. And then we've got the delay, and this, like the chorus, is digital. We've got different types. We've got stereo, ping pong, and then we've got stereo sync and ping pong sync. So you can hear that's either in the right or the left or wherever this voice is coming from, because it is dependent on the stereo spread. So increase the mix. It's stereo because it's coming out the left or the right depending on where that oscillator is or the voice is. Put it into ping pong mode. Get left and right. But if you take the stereo spread off, it's always in the center. So it's not a traditional ping pong where you might think you send a mono signal in and it goes to the left or the right. Bit different. Still get my head around it, to be honest. But you can hear it's ping pong in there. So you can sync it up to your DAW. So if we put it into sync mode, then we change the rate. It'll tell you what the rate is there. So it's very small. You probably can't pick up on the camera, but there is something that tells me that what's coming in from the DAW is 120 BPM. And you've got the different note lengths. Feedback doesn't go into mad space echo territory. So you're not getting any change in pitch when you change the delay time either. So it's not an effect delay to get special effect. It's just a nice delay there to have to do, you know, your standard delay bits and bobs. So let's add some chorus and delay. All works very well. So I think I've demoed pretty much everything on there. Haven't demoed the amplifier LFO and the amplifier LFO2 modulation. We all know what that does. But maybe let's just do it for thoroughness. So modulation, we're on LFO2. Okay, so I think I've now demoed everything I was hoping to. So what are my final thoughts? As you've heard, it does sound lovely, and I'm thinking about putting this up against my Jupiter 4 soon, so if you'd like to see that, please mention it in the comments, because this has got a lovely vintage feel to the whole thing. But like I said in the intro, it doesn't emulate anything in particular, but it takes a best of approach, which does mean there are some things that you might like that this doesn't have. Firstly, I mentioned this earlier, is a high pass filter, but like a demo, it's not really an issue, as you can lose a load of the bass just using the resonance, but a separate high pass would be nice. Although having said it, I don't really use the high pass much on my Junos or my Jupiters, but it's there if you need it. We don't have control of the unison detune amount. It's not an issue really, because it's set where I'd normally set it, where anyone would probably normally set it. But with most, you do get some control if you like tweaking around with that. We don't have that. And the lack of FM might also be a deal breaker for some. Again, it's something that I like to play with, especially in the demos, and you get some really nice spacey effects from it. But it's not very useful in most of the tones I ever use in any tracks. So once I finish demoing it and demoing the FM, I quickly get used to it not being there. My Super Jupiter, for example, it's got this FM and it's really, really lame. I think it's probably broken, and I got really uptight about it for a while, but then realized, well, I'll never use it. So, you know, best of approach, strip out the bits that maybe people don't use. And another thing it doesn't have is negative envelope, so you can't have a negative envelope shape. Again, it's not something to use that much, to be honest, but if you do, they're not in here yet, at least. I don't know if they'll be able to do a firmware upgrade where you can add a couple, but and I think while I'm talking like that, that sounds like a lot, but that's because I've been spending a lot of time playing with it, because I'm really enjoying the tone. So it's not actually a lot of stuff that's missing, especially when you consider the price, and especially when you consider how long this video is with me just showing all the cool stuff. So this is around £1,600, and it feels like it's putting up a great fight against some of the larger companies out there to me. I think it's hit a real nice little niche. I'm a vintage style synth without too many bells and whistles. If you like it raw, uncluttered, interesting, amazing, deep, rich tones, but you can get pretty much all the classics from. This is your baby. I like it, I'm a fan, and it does make me think about selling my Jupiter 4, so maybe I will throw it up against that just for a bit of synthy fun. Well, I hope that was of some use to somebody somewhere. If it was, please do subscribe, share, ring the bell, join me over on Patreon. As you know, this channel is funded by my affiliate links, YouTube ads, and my wonderful patrons, who for less than the price of a dodgy coffee a month get access to patches, samples, tutorials, and other little goodies. Also, do take a look at my starskycar.com website as well. Again, there's patches, there's samples, there's free bits and bobs on there, but like I always say, maybe pick up some of the really cheaper bits like TR606 through various distortion units for £3. It all really does help to support the channel, even if nobody ever does it. Anyway, thanks for staying to the very, very end. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you soon.